Good morning everybody, it's your pal Mark the Melody here. I hope you're going well. This week I was spending time watching the BBC iPlayer on Lena Zavaroni, the Forgotten Child star. Now, I grew up in Australia and I knew nothing about this woman until a couple of years ago. Nadia Sawalha, a loose woman, mentioned her name. And so, looked it up, and then I discovered she was a child star born in Scotland in the Western Isles, and then she appeared on a television show and became popular throughout her teenage years, and then all of a sudden she was affected in her teenage years by anorexia as well as depression, and then she faded away. She did make some TV appearances, and then all of a sudden, after having this, like, something similar to a lobotomy when they go up through the nose and into the brain, she sadly died of pneumonia after the operation, and it's been 25 years since she passed away. Now, I watched a earlier documentary about this woman, which was made almost 25 years ago. This was like in 2000. And in this documentary, they interviewed a couple who Lena stayed with, and who persuaded her to go to Canada for treatment. So the documentary that was on the BBC, it just doesn't mention that Lena sought treatment in Canada. It also doesn't mention that, like, Lena had a house fire, which happened in 1998, which destroyed most of the mementos. And it just doesn't mention that Lena was on TV a bit in the 80s, despite the fact she had a nervous breakdown on stage in 1982, and that was pretty much the end of her TV career, because she was on TV throughout the 80s, leading up to the time when she got married, and her last TV appearance was on Scottish TV in her hometown when she made her last public singing appearance. That was 1993. So when you read the Wikipedia, which we're going to get to right now, it paints, a different picture, because, Wikipedia always has this thing about fact or fiction. So, it says, Lena Hilda Zavaroni, born the 4th of November 1963, died the 1st of October 1999, was a Scottish singer and television show and host. At age 10 with her album Ma, he's making eyes at me's. She was the youngest person in history to have an album in the top 10 of the UK album charts. Later she starred in her own TV series, made numerous TV guest stars appearances and appearances on stage. At the age of 13, Zavaroni suffered from Anorexia Nervosa and developed clinical depression when she was 15. Following an operation to cure depression, Zavaroni died at the age of 35 from pneumonia on the 1st of October 1999. Okay. In the recent documentary, her father explains that he didn't find out that his daughter had anorexia until she was 16, and he was really pissed off. He was like, well, why didn't I find out sooner or later? And then there's many different questions like, oh, Lena should have been taken good care of, because back then on the BBC, so many horrendous things had happened to children thanks to bosses like Jimmy Savile or Rolf Harris, or like that Stewart guy from It's a Knockout. Because things are so much different now. Because if let's just say if Mr. Zavaroni had moved to London to be with Lena in the time rather than living with the Solomons, that would have painted a different picture. Or maybe if Lena had just lived in Scotland instead of moving to London, that also would have painted a different picture and all. But it also just bothers me, with what happened to all the money she made while on TV. I remember hearing that, her father got 40 quid a week, and he would have put that away for her, but it's just so sad how she ended up living on benefits in a council flat in the years leading up to her death, and also living on state benefits. So, come on, she was making money from 10 to 18, and also those appearances, so what really happened to that? The documentary does mention that she did get married to this man in 1989, but he didn't really love her. Like, they didn't really start off as like boyfriend and girlfriend. It just, after 18 months it failed because the man was really just comfortable at being an accessory to Lena. And sadly, Lena basically was living in Cockfosters, northeast London around that time, and so she had to like sell the house and move to a council flat, which her father lived nearby. And yeah, but also the documentary doesn't mention anything about Lena had a few overdoses while she was in Canada or while she was in Britain, because the coroner did state, she did blackmail the surgeon to have this done, otherwise she would have taken her own life. And you kind of wish, why did Lena have to go through that operation? Because it was actually, anorexia nervosa. The mental illness of anorexia was really affecting her more than depression, I guess. Because I grew up watching this documentary in Australia about this woman called Bronte battling anorexia. And she got better because they sent her to a treatment facility in Canada. And it's the same one that Lena went to they call it Montreal, even though that sounds like a town in Switzerland. So this woman, Bronte, recovered. And the last time I heard from Bronte is that, she became a mother. And this is going back 30 years ago in Australia. This is the things I remember, because I grew up in Australia. I knew nothing about Lena Zavaroni until a few years ago. So we're gonna go out today. We're gonna visit her final resting place. It's a bit north out of London, but we'll do it. Let's go. So I'm about to go out a bit north out of London to visit where Lena is buried and where she lived for her last few years of life. Now, most of my, grave stories tend to always have sad endings. Like Dead from Mayhem, Keith Emerson from Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and just recently I was at the grave of Nick Drake, and how sad that ended. And Lena's story is also another sad ending. Sometimes you think to yourself, look, do you really want to tell these stories despite the fact the ending is of the artist taking their own life? On one hand, you want to explain the story to others who don't know about the artist, but then sometimes it's it's really too sad to tell. It's like Diana Dawes. I've not done a vlog on Diana Dawes' grave because it's a sad story. Not just her passing away of ovarian cancer, but the impact that led to her husband taking his own life months later, and then her own son died down the track only a few years ago, and also how her American-born son went looking for the millions she hid in the bank account. So on World Mental Health Day, which is the 10th of the 10th, always remember that there is help out there for anybody. And I myself have experienced a lot of this mental health issues in both Australia and the United Kingdom, and I have been open about it. I remember, yes, I did have a nervous breakdown in London many years ago, which caused me to live in Sweden. But then I thought to myself, what would have happened if I had not left London and gone to Sweden? Or maybe a few years ago, what would have been the case if I had not gone to Serbia during lockdown? I really don't want to know what could have been the outcome. So anyway, let's go and honour this lady. I just arrived in Broxbourne, up north, just past the, London, Hertfordshire border. Not really too sure if this really is Hertfordshire or not, but I'm not in London anymore. So I've got a bit of a walk until I can get a bus that can take me into town, and also will get me to the cemetery. According to Google Maps, On Station Road there is a bus, the 3110, that will take you just onto Briscoe Road, which is next to the cemetery where Lena is buried. And you'll also go into the town of Hoddesdon, where Lena spent her last few years living in this area after her separation and divorce from her husband. Now, her father also lived nearby, and then after Lena passed away in Wales in 1999, he eventually moved back up to Scotland, as he'd been away from Scotland for over 20 years. Now, I'm on the bus, the 310, that also goes at Hereford. So the driver basically said just get a £2 ticket there and get a £2 ticket back, because a day ticket seems like a waste. It probably would have been maybe a £5, so £2 tickets all the way. But now that I'm not in London, I'm always a bit annoyed how buses outside of London cost more than, let's just say, buses within London. So the bus is gonna leave in a couple of minutes, just arrived early, and it's gonna drop me at the front gate of the cemetery. And on the way, it's going to go past Lena's final flat, which did have a fire that happened in 1998, which destroyed her mementos. So when you think about the storyline, Lena was in Canada, I believe, 1995 to 97, or she spent like a total of 18 months in Canada at the treatment center, and then she came back around 1997. That fire happened in 1998, even though it doesn't really mention much in the Wikipedia article, so somebody in Wikipedia got to edit that up. And yeah, Lena had that operation similar to a lobotomy, like where they just got the nose and the brain. And that was a successful operation, but sadly she contracted pneumonia in Cardiff when she was getting treated, and she passed away there. So her death certificate stated that she was living in this area at the time before she went away for the operation. But her mother's death certificate, her mother who died in 1989 just after her wedding, it stated that Lena was living in Cockfosters. So I found the grave of Lena Zavaroni, 4th of the 11th, 1963, 1st of the 10th, 1999. And so last week marked 25 years since Lena passed away. Somebody's been buried right next to her, but I do believe her father is still around. But the one thing that kind of boggles me is that she was from Scotland, her mother died there, so I don't know what happened to her mother's remains. They're probably cremated, but she's buried here because she lived the last few years of her life in this area. When I come to think about, her father would be gratefully appreciated to be buried next to his daughter, and also her sister is still around. So it's a small grave. The entrance to the cemetery is just over there. You just have to go behind these bushy old trees and you'll find Lena. May she rest in peace forevermore. So the cemetery where Lena is buried is just north of the city centre. You can easily get the 310 bus that just comes by right here. Opening hours are 9 till 6 in summer months, and then about 4 o'clock in the winter months. So do take that in mind. I didn't want to be walking around the cemetery with my camera because I wanted to be respectful of others who are, cleaning their graves and being respectful. But some people just have, different views, they could just walk around a cemetery talking like this. And out loud, on camera. It's kind of a bit rude, but I just basically went in, found Lena's grave, took a few photographs, said a few prayers, because I was raised Catholic and all, and she was Catholic too, and this is I wouldn't say it's a Catholic cemetery because it's multi-faith, because there are, I found a Jewish grave within there, and I'm pretty sure there's also Muslims buried there as well. But cemeteries, they're not always touristy spots, I guess. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go find the block of flats where Lena was living in her last few years of her life. So I assume if her marriage had broken down in 1991 and she had moved out of North London, she came here because her father was living nearby. And so she was in this flat for a couple of years, living, it was a council flat, and she was on benefits of like £50 a week. In her last year of life, she was, accused of stealing a 50p pack of jelly, which has been written up on Wikipedia, but the charges were later dropped. But in the later parts of her life, like after she made her last TV appearance in Scotland in 1993, there was still things that had happened. Like, I remember reading up online that she did have a overdose, and I believe that happened in Canada. And she also had a special friend who was a pen pal, and they called themselves Mickey and Minnie. And years after Lena died, her friend had published these private notes that Lena had written with a friend, and it also stated how she would want to take her own life if she was not being allowed to have this operation. The operation would not have cured her of the anorexia that plagued her, but it would have just done something to treat the depression. And it was quite a newer type of surgery that had happened around the time. But what history says was the operation was a success, but sadly she contracted pneumonia in hospital and passed away weeks later, which was like brought on by her anorexia. And because I don't want to compare her passing to Karen Carpenter, because Karen Carpenter also had anorexia nervosa, but I think didn't she die of a heart attack, but that was also brought on by the mental illness of anorexia. So this is the main road in town, and this is 39 Tower Heights. So Lena lived in a council flat in the 90s, and I'm not sure what had happened after her flat was damaged by the fire. I mean, she might have just been moved to another building in this area, but her death certificate said she was living at this address when she passed on in Wales. So nothing much has changed in 25 years, although it has, I guess it's had a coat of paint, it has. But I'm not really sure they would put a plaque here to say that Lena Zavaroni lived here. I think she has a memorial statue in her hometown, Scotland. That's very sufficient.